Good evening and welcome to Hatching for Health, the Jessica Hatch Show. It is Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. and we are thankful that you are joining us. We are talking to a family that is in Arizona, Mesa to be exact, and this little boy has a disorder known as nonketotic hyperglycemia. And I'm probably not saying it perfectly, but it also is known as NKH. Now this is a very rare genetic condition. It occurs 1 in every 76,000 people. So it's definitely not something that you may have ever heard of and might not ever aside from tonight. So welcome you guys. We've got Chancee Culp here and her son Lucas. So thank you guys for being here. Hey.
Thank you, Jessica.
Oh, look at his little waves. Yeah, I really appreciate y'all coming on. I'm glad that our guest coordinator Avery was able to connect with you guys, and this is a very interesting story. I don't know a whole lot about this disorder and have yet to come across it. So let's just kind of start by giving us a better explanation of it that's in more layman's terms.
Right. So Lucas's body does not completely break down the amino acid glycine, which is an amino acid that all of our bodies create. And, every typical person breaks down that amino acid just fine. However, Lucas has a genetic mutation that doesn't allow his body to completely break it down. And what happens is the glycine builds up in his blood and in his brain fluid, and it becomes toxic, which causes a whole range of side effects and symptoms such as seizures, severe global delays, weak muscle tone,
wow,
eating issues. There's a lot that goes with it. Even a weakened immune system, we've learned that NKH for whatever reason affects the immune system. So that's pretty much everything that it causes and what it is. So.
Yeah, because when I look at here, a lot of what you're saying that, aside from it being rare, the metabolic disorder caused by a defect in the enzyme system, breaking down the amino acid glycine, which you specifically are mentioning, resulting in accumulation of glycine in the body's tissues and fluids. So I guess when that accumulation happens, which typically is dispersed properly through the body system, but you're saying it builds up in areas, and I guess kind of if it's in the brain, like what exactly then happens for him?
So all of our bodies have receptors. Everyone's brain has receptors, and typically whenever you have a normal amount of glycine in your brain and in your body, then those receptors, fire and function in a typical fashion. Whenever you have too much glycine in your brain and in your cerebral spinal fluid, those neurons and those receptors are basically being attacked, and that attack on the brains, on the neurons, can cause the brain to have seizures, to die. Glycine specifically interacts with the NMDA receptor in the brain, which is solely responsible for learning and memory. So that is what creates the global delays with development, because if your brain doesn't have a chance to learn or remember because it's constantly being attacked by glycine, then you're not going to develop in a typical fashion.
Oh, yeah, that definitely affects 100% of him and his growth. And how old is Lucas?
He is almost 3. He'll be 3 in March.
Okay. So Lucas, your name is Lucas John Culp. What a great name. Are you able to wave to us? I think I saw you earlier. I know you were waving. He has a lot of energy, it seems. I know you're holding on to him, but he definitely, most kids are just sitting still through these whole things, but.
Well, and what's funny is he typically is pretty still and quiet and not super alert during any other interview we've ever done. So he must be really excited to be on the Jessica Hatch Show, because he is alert and excited to be here.
Yeah, I feel like he would just be filling us full of information if he was able to talk to us. So he's adorable. So I guess talk a little bit about, I know there's 2 different forms. I've heard the classical form and a variant form of this NKH. Which one does he fall under?
So Lucas is considered to have classic NKH. The more common, if you could say that, there's of the 500 kids worldwide who are diagnosed with NKH, about 80% have the classic form and about 20% have the variation. He does have the classic, which means that so I have a pathogenic mutation in my gene, so I'm a carrier.
Okay.
And then his dad has a well, they don't call his dad's a pathogenic. They call his a variable of unspecified significance. So basically, Lucas's DNA diagnosis of NKH is 1 in 500. So above the 500 kids that have NKH, Lucas is the only one on record with his specific mutations. So
Really?
that means that every single kid, just about every single kid, has a different mutation set that causes NKH, which, you know, just further proves how rare and hard it is to treat, because every single kid is so different.
That is absolutely, I mean, must be so difficult, like from the research standpoint on trying to kind of follow, you know, how this is developed, you know, whether it's, you know, what stages within the womb. So it is something that he's born with. Was it something that you guys were aware he was going to have prior to birth?
No, we were pretty much blindsided. I had a very typical pregnancy. You know, my doctor actually would say all the time that I had a boring pregnancy, but to me that was good. That meant that everything was going to be fine, and, you know, everything after birth was going to be boring and typical as well. And you know, obviously that wasn't the case. There was a couple of things that I learned later after he was born that I guess were signs, but with him being my first child and my first pregnancy, I didn't know that. So I didn't know that, you know, constant hiccups. He was having hiccups all day long, you know, and in my app, my baby development and, you know, pregnancy app, hiccups were good. That meant the baby was learning how to breathe.
Yeah.
But whenever you have them pretty much all day long for, you know, days on end without stop, pretty much, it's actually in utero seizures is what that is what hiccups, or, you know, in utero hiccups can be seizures actually happening inside, and it feels like hiccups, and, you know, any doctor would diagnose it as hiccups, but we know now that that's actually a sign of NKH in utero. And they do have tests where they can check to see if your, you know, baby that's still inside of you has NKH.
Oh, really?
There was no reason for us to do that kind of test. It's very invasive, and it does increase your risk of miscarriage. So we never had any tests done like that because we had no reason to believe that anything would be wrong. So
yeah, just kind of trying to understand some of these, you know, symptoms that you would have never known at the time, because it is so rare. I'm even assuming with the doctor, you know, when they have kind of a list of things that, you know, they can check to see if your child may or may not have prior to, you know, your delivery. But hiccups, I mean, would be, like you're saying, especially if you were told that means they're healthy, but for them to go on and later tell you, well, that actually means that they're having, like you're saying, minor seizures while in the womb. Is that what you said?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So how would you know the difference between a healthy hiccup or that? Did they give you any kind of detail on that end?
Basically constant hiccups. So it wasn't like he was having hiccups like once or twice a day or even once or twice a week. It was like for hours every single day. It was, you know, every single day I would feel him have the hiccups, and, you know, I would joke about it, and I even mentioned it to my doctor at one of my, you know, later appointments, you know, my post 20-week appointment. And she's like, yeah, you know, that's normal, you know, but it's just them learning how to breathe and use their lungs inside, like, and that's also what the app said. That's what everything I read online said, that hiccups were normal, but there wasn't anything that said, but by the way, if you feel like your baby is having hiccups for a prolonged number of hours every single day, then that could be something more serious. And even my doctor, once she found out about Lucas's diagnosis, she went back through all of her notes and every single appointment to see if she had maybe missed something. And I told her about the hiccups. I told her that, the NICU staff and the neurologist had told me that in utero hiccups, excessive in utero hiccups could be seizures, and it is a sign. And a lot of other moms who have kids with NCAGE report in utero hiccups and low movement. There would be days where I wouldn't feel him move at all during the day. And, I had a little heart Doppler that I bought on Amazon for myself, and I would stick it on my belly and make sure that there was still a heartbeat, because it was scary to not feel him for so long. But my doctor also had an explanation for why that could be. And so it was almost like there was always a reason that was typical. So I just tried not to think about it or worry about it. And I didn't really feel like I had any reason to worry. So whenever
Okay, no, I understand. So you told me that the process of them testing for this is fairly invasive. What exactly does that test look like?
So as far as I know from what I read, I think they call it a CSB test, where they actually take cells from inside the womb, inside the amniotic sac. I could be wrong about that. I've obviously never had the test done.
Yeah.
I just know from, like our NCAGE parents group and things like that, that it's a very invasive test that does increase the likelihood of miscarriage. And
so the risk factors were, it did not weigh like wanting to do it. It's like, I'd rather not,
Right.
And, a lot of times it's not going to affect whether or not you're going to continue through pregnancy. So it's like, let's just, let's have our baby, and the blessing is what it is. So I can imagine, avoiding those kind of invasive tests. We are going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk more in detail about, when he was born, and just kind of learn about his existing doctor visits. So we will take a quick commercial break and be right back with you guys. Imagine hearing the news as a parent that your child has been diagnosed with a condition that is degenerative or life-threatening. Now imagine being told that there's little to no research for the condition that even exists, making it difficult to try and figure out what to do next. The reality is that for so many rare conditions, finding specialists who understand the condition and being able to make informed treatment decisions for their child is very challenging. Each episode, I will help with my network of physicians and medical resources across the U.S. to attempt to connect the dots by bringing widespread recognition of rare conditions and connecting families to the best treatment, clinical experts, resources, and support. I'm going to highlight these hard-to-diagnose diseases and offer in-depth awareness for families of children in the rare disease community. I believe we are all in charge of our own healthcare, and pushing for answers and creating awareness for these various rare health conditions can make the world around us a better place. Not only am I a huge advocate who seeks to spearhead the fight to bring rare conditions to the forefront of research, but I personally had my own rare condition. In this rare condition, I was able to be cured of due to early detection. My passion to help others was fueled by that experience, and it has led me to start the Hatching for Health show. Now, this show is a vehicle for us to create awareness to help these children find cures.
From Lucas John Foundation, and we just wanted to come on today and share a little bit about Lucas and our goals. So as many of you know, I've been talking about Lucas's journey and sharing and asking for help. And so one of the things I wanted to do was just kind of tell you why. So Lucas was born with a very rare condition called NKH. So what that means is his body doesn't break down glycine. So an enzyme isn't made, and therefore his body makes too much glycine. So one of the things that, that we struggled with, like the first year, was, he battled with seizures and in and out of the hospital, which causes his immune system to be really low. But, one of the things that we did was started a lot of natural therapies and have been able to get a lot of that under, and trying to teach you guys all about what we're trying to do, which is raise funds for NKH research, for gene therapy, or there's all kinds of different researches going on. That's the one that we're most focused on and have been since the day he was born. When I started this foundation, it was to help NICU families, because when we were in the NICU, it was just so exhausting and there were so many missing pieces for families. And so one of the goals of our foundation is to not just stop with Lucas's gene therapy, but to continue to help families one by one. We have scholarships. People apply for scholarships when they need financial assistance for whatever, something their insurance doesn't cover for their kids. If they need some special equipment, we have an allotted budget amount that goes just for NICU families. And then we're working on gene therapy and raising funds for that. The goal for raising funds for gene therapy is going to not just help, Lucas with this condition, but every time a gene therapy is done, it then continues to open the door for the next and the next and the next condition.
Welcome back from the commercial break. We have Chancee Culp and Lucas Culp here. If you just now joined us, this is a disease that we're talking about known as NKH, also known as nonketotic hyperglycemia. So we were talking with the mother and her son Lucas. So I know we were just discussing about the pregnancy and whether or not to get tested for this, but tell me now, when he was born, was the birthing experience and how he came out and whether he needed to go in the NICU or anything, was there anything different about that part of having the baby?
So my water did break about 72 hours before he was actually born. So my water broke, but labor did not start. I was induced the next day around, I want to say midnight is whenever they finally got everything settled and realized I wasn't going to continue labor. They started inducing me.
Okay.
And I had him at 11 o'clock the next morning. So it was a pretty short labor. I pushed 3 times and he came right out, and he cried, and he passed all of his initial, tests that they do as soon as the baby is born. He was having trouble staying awake, and he was having trouble latching and feeding. Everyone assured me that this was normal, that it just takes a long time, or it could take up to 24 hours for the baby to be acclimated to the Earth's atmosphere, and that it was nothing to worry about. About 24 hours after birth, he kind of woke up and seemed like he had some energy and wanted to eat. So we immediately tried to start feeding, and pretty much after that is whenever he just started to go downhill. But he was cleared by 2 different pediatricians who said that he was good to go home, which isn't uncommon for kids with NKH.
Okay.
However, our nursing staff, our postpartum care nursing staff, really felt like something wasn't right, and they wanted a third opinion. So they brought in a third pediatrician after speaking with my husband and I, and we agreed that we didn't think that everything was okay either. He thought that maybe Lucas had an infection that just wasn't showing up yet in his blood cultures, and suggested that we send him to the special care nursery to receive antibiotics. Once we got to the nursery, that's whenever the newborn specialist noticed Lucas jerking his fist. He was jerking his arm like this, and he said that was seizures. And everyone else said that it was just an underdeveloped nervous system, but he recognized it as seizures. He got him on a loading dose of anti-seizure medication and called the nearest NICUs to see where he could be sent. Fortunately for us, he was sent to St. Joseph's NICU first, because they were the ones with an open bed.
So this was the main thing that was like kind of alarming or did not seem normal based on like him, having just been born. Like basically the quick movement from a newborn was the thing that was like, something's not right. Like that was the particular concern. Right. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, so his jerking, his inability to stay awake, and his inability to feed, all of those were the main concern, yes. Okay.
And at that point, so y'all did go to NICU and at a nearby hospital, you said? Okay.
Yes, we had to be sent to another hospital that had a true NICU because our birthing hospital did not.
Okay.
And it just so happens that the neurologist that was on call for that NICU is actually a neurogeneticist, and he recognized Lucas's symptoms, ordered some tests to confirm his theory. Those tests came back with exceedingly high levels of glycine, and he knew exactly what medication he needed. He knew exactly, what steps to take next. And Lucas was diagnosed with NCAH within 3 days of life, whereas it can take up to weeks, if not months, for parents to get a diagnosis of NCAH because it's just so unknown. We're just super.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a blessing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That he was
Huge
happened
blessing.
to be on site that
He was
particular
able
day.
to get right that day, that time. I mean, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're throwing out all of these scenarios like meningitis and all of these things. And he came in, he did his assessment, ordered some tests, and figured it out. Are you getting hungry? I know it's time to eat.
So you and your husband, I mean, I'm assuming y'all were both there at that moment. I guess tell me about that. Like, here you are, 9 months, you now have this, beautiful little boy, and you're rushing around because things don't add up, and then bam, this kind of, news. What was that moment like for you guys?
Devastating. It felt actually like time just stood still. And, hours had gone by, but it felt as if it had only been 1 minute. I remember going to the special care nursery, and by the time the ambulance showed up to take him to the NICU at the other hospital, it had already been like 4.5, almost 5 hours, and I had no idea. So it was devastating. It was just crazy to think that, we had this completely normal pregnancy. We had an entire nursery set up at home, and now we're being told that our child has, a very rare and potentially life-threatening condition, and there's not really anything anybody can do about it. So
yeah, so it was very difficult. I know he brings like laughter and smiles to everyone's face around. I can just see by looking at him. So just on a positive, lighthearted side, like what's something about Lucas that I guess would surprise people, that they would never know, that just something that he's unique about him?
So he might not be able to talk, but he can communicate. If he does not like something, he will tell you. If he wants something, he has his own way of communicating with us and letting us know what he likes and what he doesn't like. He really loves the Golden Girls, of all things.
Oh my gosh, how cute.
He loves the theme song. If the theme song comes on, even if he's asleep, he'll immediately wake up and look around and try to find the TV to watch the show.
That's so cute. It's like an oldie show, but
it is.
He's young at, what is that, like young at heart but older at spirit. He's like into something that he would not even be watching, but he likes that's really cute. I would definitely not know that. That's a surprise.
Yeah.
So
I think too, on a really positive note, the fact that we were told whenever he was 4 days old that he wouldn't be leaving the hospital, that we would be making the decision to take him off of a ventilator. Oh. And he never went onto that ventilator. He opened his eyes the next day, and within a week of us being told that, we were talking about leaving the NICU, and he was feeding on his own and breathing on his own and doing everything that he should do. And so I just want to let people know, to advocate for your kids. No matter what the doctors tell you, they are smart, but they don't know everything, and they're not always right. So if your gut and your spirit is telling you to fight for your kid and to believe that they are going to live, and they might not have the easiest road ahead of them, but they have a life ahead of them, and their life is worth it. So exactly,
it's just as important as every single one of them being born. I think that's
Absolutely.
A really good point, and I think a lot of times doctors, they want to give you hope, but they also don't want to set expectations and, and fall short, so it's like if they if you know, kind of they give you not the best case scenario, that way when the best case scenario happens, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, and it just feels like that much more of a blessing, because it really is. I mean, every day, you know, is a blessing for Lucas. You know, because we don't have a lot of time. I do want for the viewers to understand, you know, what his life is like for the sake from a day-to-day basis. Is he having to see certain specialists, you know, to kind of keep up with what is going on in his little body, or is you know, is it kind of like, this is what you need to do and good luck? I mean, how is that communication with the doctors now?
Yes, so we have an excellent team of doctors. He sees obviously a neurologist.
Mm-hmm.
His geneticist is the main geneticist that studies NCH out of the University of Colorado. He sees a gastrointestinal specialist. He sees a specialist for his entire genetic code, an epigeneticist. He has obviously his pediatrician and his dentist and his eye doctor. So he does see a whole lot of doctors, and there is a whole lot of care and teamwork that goes into taking care of him from day to day. He gets 24 syringes of medicine a day. He's on the ketogenic diet to help manage the glycine in his brain, which is considered a medication all of its own because of the medicinal properties that it has for glycine.
Okay.
And
24 syringes, and are those a number of different antibiotics, or what exactly is?
So anti-seizure medications, glycine reducing medications, vitamins and supplements.
Okay.
Medications to protect that NMDA receptor that we had talked about before.
Okay.
CBD oil.
These are given, you know, not through an actual IV. They're given, like, they're ingested, like.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Orally, yes. Orally or through his tube, depending on if he's awake or not.
Okay. 24 of them every day.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a lot. So tell me when the foundation was actually formed, because I know that it's not super common to have, you know, a little child so young and already have a foundation in his name and helping to advocate for him.
Yeah, so while we were in the NICU, we came up with the idea for the foundation after seeing just the need for familial. I'm sorry, choking on your slobber.
Mm-hmm.
We really saw a need for familial support while we were in the NICU. There were so many children who were, you know, spending hours or days alone because their parents were still having to, you know, maintain their lives and go to work and function. So we wanted to create a foundation that supported those families in the NICU. And of course, after we got it started, it evolved, and of course we're raising money to research the cure for NCH because you know, since it is an orphaned disease, all of the funding for a cure and for a treatment is done by the families involved. So there are quite a few foundations that the families have started across the country who are, you know, working together to help support these researchers to get a cure.
And how can someone find your organization? Is the website? What is the website?
The website is lucasjohnfoundation.com.
Okay.
We're also all over social media, so Lucas John Foundation is pretty much our handle on every social media site.
Okay. Yeah, so
if
that
you
way...
want to learn more specifically about Lucas and his story, you can go to savinglucas.com, and that's, you know, more about Lucas and less about the foundation and what all we provide for people. So the foundation is definitely for support of anyone, regardless of their child's diagnosis, whereas Saving Lucas is mostly for gene therapy research and donations towards that.
So Chancee, tell me maybe a milestone, just an accomplishment that, you know, that you've seen out of Lucas in the last 6 months.
So as you can tell, he's very vocal right now and chatting it up, and he's alert and awake, and he has been for this whole interview. And I think that's one of his biggest accomplishments in the past 6 months since starting the keto diet and getting him, you know, getting his brain more healthy and less glycine in his brain because of the keto diet.
Okay.
He is more alert and and more talkative, more vocal.
Yeah.
And
In the keto, I know he sure is. He is like ready to just blurt something out at us. So the keto diet, that's actually, I mean, I know a lot of people try and do that just to help, will feel healthier, have more energy, but they're actually identifying that as helping with this particular condition.
Correct. So, whenever he was first born, we were told that there was absolutely no way to remove the glycine from his brain, that they would remove it from the blood and hopefully it would come out of the brain.
Okay.
However, his geneticist in Colorado has been studying the keto diet and how it can reduce glycine in the brain. And for the first time in his 40 years of studying NKH, he is seeing normal levels of glycine in the brain, which is, it's major. So
that is huge.
while we
Yeah.
do have to, that it is a very, it's a hard diet. It's pretty much a medication for Lucas, but it's 100% worth it.
I think so. I think
we'll never go.
With people watching that or have a child with this condition, I think knowing that maybe it's something that they haven't, come across yet. So I think that, I mean, that's huge. It's almost like a different form of medicine for them. When someone meets Lucas for the first time, like, what is it that they think that, he was born with or that he has going on?
I don't really know. I think that most of the time people just try to be polite and they comment about how good looking he is or how handsome he is. I typically just tell him that, he has special needs. He has developmental delays, and if they do seem interested, I might go a little deeper. But a lot of the times, if you just come out and start battling off nonketotic hyperglycinemia, they're kind of, over their head. So
yeah, I bet. And then too, I like kind of from the mother standpoint, like something you could tell, or I guess if he could actually talk to us, like what do you think is something that he would want to share with us just about you guys as a family?
Never give up, do whatever it takes to get him to his next milestone and to his next stage of life. And I remember very vividly God telling me that if you put limits on Lucas, then you're putting limits on me, as in, putting limits on God. And I don't believe there's any reason to put limits on God, so there should be no reason to put limits on Lucas. And that's kind of how our entire family and Lucas's whole care team looks at it, as we're going to do whatever it takes, and we're just going to keep trusting and believing that God's going to lead the way like he has from the very beginning.
That's beautiful. I love that. It's the mentality to have, and it's the best. I think, as a believer and, myself, and just knowing what he's capable of, sometimes, letting it be in his hands and doing everything that we can possibly do as well. So, well, you've been a blessing having you on the show. Lucas, thank you so much. You're gonna watch this later, and hopefully we're gonna be able to talk to you at a later time, and we can reconvene and have you on the show. So
absolutely.
It was, and we talked a little bit about the foundation, so others will be able to go to the lucasjohnfoundation.com to learn more. And we'll also continue following you guys on social media. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye. And thank you all for tuning in this evening. We will be right back here next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m.